Ephesians 5, verse 33, the Apostle Paul says, "Each man must love his wife as he loves himself, and the wife must respect her husband." So each man must love his wife as he loves himself, and each wife must respect her husband. There you go. Class dismissed. Let's go have lunch. Well, those of you that have been married for any period of time know that it's more challenging than that. I've had the privilege of working over the past 10 years with about 2,000 couples. And in that, I've shared a lot and I've helped a lot, and believe me, I have gained so much from the clients that I've worked with. And so this is an accumulation of three characteristics that I have found very consistently in vibrant marriages, and I've been inspired by clients to incorporate more of this in my marriage as well. The first characteristic is that people that are in vibrant relationships and vibrant marriages are intentional. They're intentional. It doesn't just happen. When people say, the grass looks greener on the other side of the fence, my response is, they water. They're taking care of it. So people are intentional. A friend of mine is a pastor back in Michigan, and he told me this story once of this adorable older couple in his church. And he said they would come into church, and the man would walk real tall, even though he was a smaller couple, but he would walk tall, and he'd have his arm out, and his bride would take his arm, and they'd come walking in, and he'd open the door for her, and her eyes would twinkle up as she smiled at him. And my friend and his wife had the opportunity to take this couple out for dinner on their 50th wedding anniversary. And he made the comment to the couple, "You must have been so in love when you got married for it to have lasted 5 decades. And the couple looked at each other and they giggled. And they said to my friend, "We're from the old country. Our marriage was arranged. We met on our wedding day. It was the decisions that we made after the wedding that nurtured the love that you see displayed now." So they were intentional. I've had the opportunity to teach a marriage and family class over at Colorado Christian University a few times, and one of my favorite assignments in the class is an interview. I have every student find a couple that has been successfully married for at least 25 years, and there's all these interview questions. One of the questions is, "Tell me about the hard times." See, I think we can get to that idea that, if we just pick the right person and just pick the right career and the right neighborhood and the right church, smooth sailing. It's not true. There are rough times that are coming, and it's just so amazing to read story after story of couples that have had financial ruin, that have lost children, that have been unable to have children, that have suffered through infidelity and medical crisis after medical crisis. All kinds of horrific stories. And what I've found in reading all of these papers is that there isn't a one-size-fits-all answer. Read these scriptures, pray this prayer, go to this church, boom, you're all set. In fact, a lot of these couples had to try this, didn't work, try that, do something different. And what drives that is an underlying belief that there is an answer that exists. It's an underlying faith that there will be something fruitful from this effort. It's very similar in our relationship with the Lord. Hebrews 11:6 says, "Without faith, it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him." There is a faith that informs our decisions. There was a faith that informed your decision to get up, shower, come to Forefront this morning. There was an expectation of faith that it's going to be beneficial to me to do that. When I'm working with couples, the couples that have that faith that this is hard, but there's going to be a reason, there's going to be a purpose, there's going to be something beneficial from going through this hard season. So there's a faith that informs it. Vibrant relationships are intentional. I encourage you to gather yourself around with people who are like-minded. I know Forefront is very into vital small group relationships, cell groups, home groups, what do you call them? Life groups. Good name. Life groups. So find a life group and engage with that. If you're a married couple going through a difficult season, find a married couple that's further down the road and ask them to walk with you for a year or so. Jan and I have had mentors 3 or 4 different times in our lives. When we came up against something new, we started having children, or we had some financial difficulties, or different things that came up, different hardships. And instead of going through it Lone Ranger style, we asked and asked for people with wisdom to speak into our lives and to help us navigate those difficult seasons. So be intentional. Get those people around you to help you move forward. The second characteristic of vibrant relationships is that they're transformational. Transformational. I threw that word in there because it's long and it would make me sound really intelligent. Transformational. This is what transformational means. I think the best picture, a couple of movies that we really enjoy in our home give us a picture of transformation. It's a Wonderful Life and The Wizard of Oz. And the two movies have this characteristic in common. At the end of the movie, the main characters are in exactly the same place they were at in the beginning of the movie. Nothing externally had changed. Dorothy's still in Kansas. She's still got some mean woman trying to steal her dog. Right? The Baileys are still $8,000 in the hole and looking at some really bad things, jail time and scandal and all kinds of stuff. So at the end of the movie, nothing external is different. Internally, though, everything had changed for them. It's transformation. I think the most poignant picture of that is in It's a Wonderful Life. You remember when he found out that there were $8,000 missing, and you could just see the weight of the world on his shoulders. And he comes home, and he sees his wife, and he sees his kids, and he doesn't know what he's going to do about it. And there's all this pressure on him. And he finds out his little daughter, Zuzu, is upstairs, and she's sick. So he goes walking upstairs to see her, and as he walks up the stairs, he hits the top of the railing, and that little knob comes off in his hand, and you just see the anger and the rage. He just grabs it. He just wants to throw it through a window. Puts back down, goes up, visits with his daughter, and then he has his transformational experience. He gets this amazing gift of being able to see what the world would be like if he had never been born. And you saw the heartache. You saw at the end where he was begging God, please just let me live. I will face those consequences. I will face those circumstances. I've got to see my wife. I've got to see my kids again. I've got to see. He basically had this transformation where he said, I will go back to the very thing I thought I wanted to leave. Just let me live. And so when he came back, he walks into his house, and there's a police officer there ready to arrest him, and there's the newspaper there ready to blow this scandal out of the water. And he sees those 4 kids at the top of the stairs that he thought he might never see again. And he goes running up the stairs after him, and he hits that same stupid thing come off in his hand. You remember what he did to it this time? He kisses it. Never thought I'd see you again. Transformation. Externally, nothing different. Internally, everything was changed. Romans 12:2 tells us, do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Same circumstances, But I look at life differently when I go into that transformation process. My favorite clients over the years, the ones who inspire me to be a better man, a better husband, better father, better counselor, have this characteristic in common. They do not demand that the world bows to their will. They accept their circumstances. And they seek that kind of transformation that enables them to experience the very same circumstances from a fresh, hope-filled, life-affirming perspective. It doesn't mean that they give up on what they want. Because when I sit down with folks, it's rare that I hear them say that they want something that's not good. I want more love. I want more affection. I want more respect, more quality time, a good conversation. I want to feel like I'm loved or even liked at times. Good desires. But the pre-transformation question is, how do I get my spouse to? How do I get my kids? How do I get my boss? How do I get the world to bow to what I want? Post-transformation questions are different. How can I endure this with more kindness? How can I be more patient? How can I be more truthful, more authentic? Post-transformational questions are different that don't demand the world bow to my will. And you want to know something that's fascinating about that process? Often, not always, but often, it's that very transformed perspective that a person carries into their consequences. That's the very thing that begins to alter their consequences, that alter their situation. It begins to improve the very situation that they were longing to be different because they have been transformed. They think differently, they respond differently, and they're actually drawing something better out of their spouse or their boss or whoever it is that they're in this vibrant relationship with. So vibrant relationships are intentional and they're transformational. The third quality that I've seen consistently over time is that people in vibrant relationships are teachable. They're teachable. And the one skill that I would encourage and that I would teach and that I would require every graduating senior, every premarital couple, everybody I could get my hands on that would listen is the skill of listening. If we could learn this skill consistently, I think it would change the world. A lot of times I'll have couples come into my office and they will, sit down and I'll say, so what are we doing here? What's going on? And very often I'll hear the comment, we're not communicating. And I tell myself, that is not possible. You can choose not to speak, but you are still communicating something, aren't you? It may not be what you want, but you are still communicating. So you cannot not communicate. What I interpret their problem to be is that we are lacking understanding. We're not getting to the point of really being able to deeply understand what my spouse wants, what they need, what they're communicating. James 1:19 says, be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry. Quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry. Well, if you're like me and a lot of the clients I've worked with, you'll hear a story that you've heard before, and you'll say, man, I have heard this so many times before. Do I really have to hear this again? I've said this to my bride. And it didn't help, in case you were wondering. So I want to make a distinction this morning between hearing and the scripture that says, be quick to listen. A couple simple examples. Have you ever been at the playground? Kids swinging, going down the slide, climbing up the monkey bars, playing chase, just having a great old time. Parents over here chit-chatting, dogs running around, geese honking. I mean, just noise all over the place. In the middle of that, all of a sudden you'll see a parent go, from across the playground, they heard a distress signal. Their child is hurt or in some type of distress. I submit to you, that's the difference between hearing and listening. A simpler example, my wife talked me into becoming a bird watcher a few years ago. And it's fascinating, it's beautiful, it's calming, it's a wonderful hobby. And now we'll be driving along somewhere, or we'll be having our coffee in the morning or something, and in the middle of it, we'll go, ooh, chickadee-dee-dee. Right? Or, oh, did you hear that mourning dove? Or that meadowlark? It just enriches the moment for us because we're listening and it has value and it has meaning for us. One of the skill sets that I practice that seems so simple, like throwing a beanbag up in the air, but is really challenging, is listening. My wife designed these mugs. I think they're genius. This is a speaker-listener mug, and on one side it says, speaker, I feel. And it's a reminder to me as a speaker, my mission is not to get my way. It's not to bulldoze my agenda through. It's to reveal who I am, what matters to me, what I like, what I don't like. So the speaker side is I feel. Switched around, it's the listener side. And the listener side says, I heard. My mission as a listener is not to agree or disagree. It's not to debate. It's not to negotiate. It's to understand first. We can get to negotiate, debate. We can agree, disagree later. But if I don't feel like I've been heard and understood, the solution isn't really even going to matter because I don't feel like I've got a dog in the fight. So, speaker-listener, simple technique to understand, challenging, takes a lot of practice. So the question is, why should I? Why should I go through this exercise of trying to learn to listen better? I mean, I've heard the story so many times. Why do I need to listen differently? I'll give you two examples from our lives. Last summer, Jan had the opportunity to speak to a women's group on God's lavish love. And so as she was preparing to speak, she was watching a movie called The Little Princess. You ever see The Little Princess? Shirley Temple, thank you. Little Shirley Temple movie. Shirley Temple is the daughter of a colonel. And the country gets called to war. The colonel leaves. And they think he's dead, he's missing in action, and so all of her possessions get stripped from her and she gets put into this boarding school. So she goes from the lap of luxury to a room that doesn't even have heat. And you see her go into this, from here, and as the movie progresses, you see she starts to get drained of her energy and of her spunk. And there's this one scene where a couple of neighbors come into her room when she's out doing her chores, and they fill her room with gifts. And I'm watching this movie with Jan, and I notice she's tearing up over this. And it was a moving scene, but something about that caught my attention, and I asked her, what is so moving about this for you? And she told me a story. This was last year. We had been married 28 years. And she told me a story that when she was a little girl, I knew parts of the story. When she was a little girl, her father died of a sudden heart attack. Sister died of a brain tumor. Her family got disrupted in so many ways. And there was a season where she was in a boarding school. And while she was in the boarding school, other girls would have family come and take them out for the weekend or come and take them out to dinner and do things, and she just didn't have anybody there. One weekend, her birthday weekend, she was out doing chores, doing whatever she was doing, and she came back to her room. Her bed was covered with gifts. Her older brothers, 9 and 11 years older than she was, didn't have the capacity to take her in and care for her, but remembered her on her birthday and gave her that gift of that reminder that she wasn't forgotten, that she was cared for. We've been married 28 years. I'd never heard that part of the story, and there's something about hearing it that made me love her more, that made me want to be a better protector, to be a better man for my wife, because I saw this little girl who, for no fault of her own, suffered these experiences. So learning to listen, you might hear something that you've never heard before, and it might enrich your relationship. The second reason is you might help your spouse discover and recapture part of their own soul, part of their own story. Jan and I do a couples coffee at Bear Valley Church, open to any couple that wants to come once a month. And we talk about marriage-related topics, sometimes do some games, have some fun, do some different activities. In this last season, we were practicing speaker-listener one night. And so we thought we would be the couple to give the example. And so I picked a topic. She was going to be the listener. I was going to be the speaker. And it was supposed to be a topic of something that was distressing me a little bit. I didn't want to pick anything real deep and heavy. You know, there's 20 couples there. Some we knew well, some we didn't know so well. And, so you don't want to get too heavy. So I picked what I thought was a safe topic. See, a couple months ago, a few months ago, I bought a motorcycle. I haven't ridden a motorcycle since I was a kid riding dirt bikes. And I bought this motorcycle, and I was a little concerned because it's been a long time since I've ridden. And I went out there and started looking, and there's these massive bikes that I knew if I got one of those, I would just be too intimidated. I'd probably never take it out. And so we kept looking, and we found a bike that fit me. It was a Kawasaki 500, big enough to get out on the road, but not so big that I'd be intimidated and never ride. So I took a picture of this, I posted it on Facebook, and I said, does this qualify for midlife crisis? And people, commented, oh, cool, yeah, way to go. And this one guy commented, I remember my first moped. Thank you. And I'm thinking, now I know this guy. He rides motorcycles. He's ridden motorcycles a long time. He's got some big, beefy Harley, kind of a thing. And he's a good-hearted guy. He didn't mean anything bad by it. This is how he lets you know that he likes you, he harasses you, and unfortunately, he likes me. So I thought that would be a good topic. It bothers me a little bit, and I knew it bothered me a little bit because I knew I was going to see him at an upcoming men's retreat. And you know what I did before the men's retreat? I got on Craigslist, and I started looking for my next bike. One that would be more acceptable to him, that would be more impressive, bigger. And so this is the story I decided. We'll tell it safe enough. Obviously it irritates me a little bit. So we'll talk about it. So 22 couples, I don't know, sitting there watching us do this, and Jan's the listener. And all she's doing is reflecting back my story, telling me what she heard. And when she summarized my story, she said, it sounds like you're ashamed of something you thought would be really joyful in your life. And I broke. And I wish these 20 couples would leave. See, I didn't know how deep that went. Part of my story, part of my struggle, part of the redemption that God is bringing about in my life is I have always, for as long as I can remember, believed that good things are for other people. It's hard for me to embrace that God has good things for me. And all she did was reflect back my story as I told it. And it gave me permission to go, you're right. This is one of those areas that I can just embrace, and I don't need to impress him with my bike. So, a reason to become an exceptional listener is that you can be a redemptive part of a story for those that you love, for your spouse, for your kids, for people that you're in vibrant relationship with. So that's about 10 years worth of just general understanding of what makes vibrant relationships, what I've experienced in my life. People who are vibrant are intentional. They gather good people around them that can offer them wisdom and truth and encouragement. They're transformational. They know that in this fallen world, life doesn't always go well, but God is drawing something good out of us even in those difficult circumstances. And they're teachable, especially in the area of listening. If you really want to become a redemptive part of somebody's story, that's where I would go, is become an exceptional listener. Let me pray. Father, you've invited us to be in a vibrant relationship with you. We can't even imagine the cost that you were willing to pay to call us your sons and your daughters. And I thank you for the courageous clients I've had the opportunity to work with who have called me to be better. And I pray for every person in here, whatever their state, whatever their situation, that there would be something that they would walk away with, a step to become more vibrant in how they relate, and that they would just know you're in the midst of it.